The internet didn't just react to what dropped that night, it convulsed. Timelines froze, comment sections erupted, and for a brief moment it felt like every Sister Wives fan collectively sucked in the same breath. One image, one single frame. And somehow, it managed to do what nearly 2 decades of reality television never fully accomplished. It exposed the truth in a way no confessional, no reunion couch, no carefully edited season arc ever could. A truth Kody Brown spent years trying to bury beneath control, division, and carefully curated chaos. The photo was deceptively simple. No dramatic lighting, no staged poses, just 3 women standing close, arms linked naturally, champagne glasses raised mid-laugh as if the photographer had caught them in the middle of a private joke. Janelle in the center, glowing with the unmistakable energy of someone who has finally stepped into a life that belongs entirely to her. Christine beside her, radiant in the way only a woman who escaped first can be, carrying the quiet pride of someone who knows she cracked the door open for the others. And then there was Mary. That was the shockwave. The detail that turned curiosity into full-blown cultural obsession. Mary Brown, arm in arm with the very women she was once positioned against, laughing freely, unapologetically, without a trace of hesitation. For years, viewers were conditioned to believe this moment could never happen. The narrative told us these women were incompatible, permanently fractured, incapable of unity. But that belief didn't originate organically. It was cultivated, maintained, weaponized. Kody Brown thrived on fragmentation. As long as the wives were emotionally siloed, as long as communication stayed strained and suspicion lingered, his authority remained intact. The moment those walls collapsed, his power would evaporate. And that is exactly what this photo represented. Not a reunion, not a truce. Reckoning. What made the image so devastating wasn't just who was in it, but who wasn't. Kody wasn't cropped out. He wasn't excluded by accident. He was irrelevant to the moment entirely. The laughter didn't orbit him. The joy didn't reference him. The bond on display existed independently of his presence. And that reality hit harder than any insult ever could. For a man who built his identity around being the gravitational center of every relationship, this was the ultimate humiliation. Social media caught on instantly. Fans dissected the body language with forensic precision. Janelle's posture relaxed, unguarded. Christine leaning in, not performing, not posturing. Mary's expression, the most telling of all, wasn't tentative or cautious. It was confident, grounded, free. This wasn't a publicity moment. This was chemistry you can't fake. The kind that only emerges after long-held truths are finally spoken out loud. Online speculation exploded. According to sources close to the event, this wasn't a random grouping of guests drifting together for a quick snapshot. Mary wasn't simply invited, she was included. Actively, intentionally. She moved through the reception as if she belonged exactly where she was, because she did. Those familiar with the production claimed the cameras pivoted the second she entered the frame, sensing instinctively that something historic was unfolding. And then there was the champagne. For outsiders it might have seemed trivial. For longtime viewers it was symbolic rebellion. Years of rigid expectations, religious pressure, and performative restraint shattered in a single clink of glasses. No apologies, no explanations, just women choosing joy on their own terms. The laughter wasn't forced. It wasn't nervous. It was the kind that comes from relief, from survival, from finally realizing the threat is gone. What were they laughing about? That question became its own storyline. Some fans theorized it was an inside joke, something said just out of frame. Others believed it was the absurdity of hindsight, the shared realization that they endured far more than they ever deserved. Whatever the reason, the effect was undeniable. The image didn't just contradict Kody's version of events. It obliterated it. Because if these women could stand together like that, relaxed and joyful, then the problem was never them. For Kody, this image was more than embarrassing. It was destabilizing. It rewrote the story he spent years narrating. He had framed himself as the victim of disloyalty, the misunderstood patriarch burdened by difficult women. This photo flipped the lens. It suggested something far more unsettling. That the dysfunction wasn't a byproduct of plural marriage. It was him. And just when it seemed like the photo alone would dominate headlines, the situation escalated. According to multiple reports circulating rapidly through fan communities, Kody attempted to insert himself into the wedding in a way that stunned even long-time observers of his behavior. Not with a heartfelt message. Not with an olive branch. But with a package. Delivered. On the day. Through a courier. Witnesses described the moment as jarring. A vehicle pulling up mid-celebration. A clearly labeled delivery addressed from Kody and Robyn. The audacity alone sparked whispers. You weren't invited. You weren't welcome. And yet, here you were, forcing your presence into a moment that wasn't yours. Speculation rippled through the reception. Was it an apology? A sentimental relic from the past? Something for the kids? Janelle reportedly didn't rush to open it. The box wasn't placed with the other gifts. It was set aside, treated cautiously, as though instinctively everyone sensed it carried weight far heavier than wrapping paper. When it was finally opened, the energy shifted. According to sources, inside wasn't warmth or closure. It was paperwork. Allegedly, documentation related to the Coyote Pass property taxes. Accompanied, reportedly, by a note that implied unfinished financial obligations. Reminder. Tether. On her wedding day. True, the symbolism was staggering. A celebration of new beginnings interrupted by an attempt to drag old control back into the room. Power play disguised as responsibility. For years, finances were used as leverage, as pressure, as a way to maintain dominance. This was that tactic, resurrected in the most inappropriate setting imaginable. But this wasn't the Janelle of seasons past. According to those present, she didn't cry. She didn't argue. She didn't spiral. She laughed. Calm, knowing laugh. She closed the box, handed it back, and with a quiet finality that sent shockwaves through everyone watching, allegedly told the courier to return it to sender. Not at this address anymore. The double meaning landed instantly. She wasn't just rejecting the paperwork. She was rejecting the hold. The narrative. The emotional jurisdiction he believed he still possessed. In that moment, the message was unmistakable. You don't get access to my joy. You don't get a seat at this table. You don't get to rewrite my future. And standing nearby, according to reports, were Christine and Mary. The moment the box was handed back, something invisible but irreversible shifted in the room. It wasn't loud. There was no gasp, no dramatic confrontation. But people felt it. The kind of shift you only recognize in hindsight, when you realize you've just watched the end of an era without knowing it at the time. Janelle didn't announce what was inside the package. She didn't need to. The calm confidence of returning it untouched said everything. Whatever power that box was meant to carry died the second it left her hands. Word spread quickly anyway. Weddings are like ecosystems. Information moves fast, especially when cameras are nearby and emotions are high. Within minutes, whispers turned into knowing looks. Guests began connecting dots, not because they were told to, but because the story made sense. It fit a pattern they'd watched unfold for years. Allegedly sending paperwork instead of well wishes wasn't shocking. It was familiar. It was on brand. And the reaction to that familiarity was unity. People closed ranks around Janelle instinctively. What could have been awkward became galvanizing. Laughter didn't stop. Music didn't pause. If anything, the energy intensified. The message was clear. This celebration wasn't fragile. It wasn't dependent on anyone's approval. And it certainly wasn't going to be derailed by a last-ditch attempt to assert control. This is where the story deepens, because the returned package wasn't just a personal boundary. It was a public one. For years, financial confusion hovered like a fog over the family. Viewers watched Janelle make sacrifices that never quite balanced out. She spoke openly about cashing out retirement funds, about prioritizing collective stability, about trusting the system. A system that, over time, seemed to benefit one household far more than the others. So when reports began circulating that the package allegedly referenced property taxes, fans didn't just react emotionally. They reacted contextually. They remembered. They remembered the land debates, the shifting plans, the delays, the promises that never materialized. And suddenly, the act of returning that box wasn't petty. It was poetic. According to sources close to the situation, Christine was nearby when it happened. She didn't intervene. She didn't need to. Her presence alone carried weight. Christine has long been positioned as the emotional catalyst, the first domino, the one who walked away and proved survival was possible. Seeing her there, calm and unbothered, was a reminder of how far the narrative had traveled. And then there was Mary. If the photo was the shock, Mary's energy that night was the confirmation. Guests reportedly described her as relaxed, sharp, and noticeably lighter. This wasn't the version of Mary viewers had grown used to seeing intense confessionals or awkward group scenes. This was someone unburdened. Someone who no longer needed to hedge her words or calculate her loyalty. That shift mattered more than people initially realized. For years, Mary was the variable Kody relied on. The one who stayed tethered just enough to keep the illusion alive. The one whose hope could be leveraged, whose silence could be counted on. Seeing her standing confidently with Janelle and Christine sent a message louder than any toast ever could. The triangulation was over. And somewhere miles away, according to online speculation, Kody found out. Sources claim that word of the photo and the returned package reached him quickly. In the age of smartphones and group chats, moments like this don't stay contained. Screenshots travel, clips circulate, and when they land, they don't ask permission. For someone already sensitive to losing control of the narrative, the combination of public unity and public rejection was combustible. That's when the tone reportedly shifted from reactive to aggressive. Fans began noticing subtle changes almost immediately. Cryptic posts, tight-lipped statements, whispers of legal options. The language being used behind the scenes allegedly moved away from reconciliation and toward retaliation. The story, as some insiders tell it, is that Kody wasn't just upset about the wedding. He was furious about what was being said at the wedding. Because while the package incident was symbolic, it wasn't the centerpiece of the night. The microphone was. As the evening progressed and the formalities gave way to celebration, the receptions settled into that familiar wedding rhythm. The lights softened. Conversations deepened. Glasses refilled. This is the part of the night where people relax, where guards come down. And eventually someone taps a glass. When Mary stood up, the room reportedly quieted almost instantly. There's context here that matters. Historically, Mary has been cautious in public spaces. Measured. Reserved. She survived by not saying too much, by choosing ambiguity over confrontation. Many viewers found that frustrating. Others recognized it as self-preservation. Either way, expectations were low. People didn't anticipate fireworks. They were wrong. According to multiple accounts circulating online, Mary didn't bring notes. She didn't read from a phone. She spoke freely. She congratulated Janelle sincerely, acknowledging the complexity of their shared past without sanitizing it. She named the truth gently at first, referencing years of effort, compromise, and trying to make something work that never quite did. And then she pivoted. What followed has already taken on a life of its own in fan spaces. A metaphor delivered casually that landed like a precision strike. She compared their shared journey to a vehicle they spent years trying to fix. Changing parts, making excuses, convincing themselves the problem was temporary, until finally accepting that the issue wasn't maintenance. It was the machine itself. The room erupted. Laughter, applause, the kind of reaction you can't edit into existence. And Mary didn't stop there. She raised her glass and toasted to upgrades, to reliability, to no longer settling for breakdowns disguised as commitment. She never said a name. She didn't have to. Those present reportedly understood immediately. And more importantly, so did Kody once the story reached him. What made it sting wasn't just the content. It was the delivery. Humor disarms. Metaphor protects. And truth, when wrapped in wit, is incredibly difficult to attack without looking defensive. That didn't stop the reaction. Within hours, according to reports, legal language started surfacing. Words like defamation, reputation, public figure. The irony wasn't lost on fans. 4 years, deeply personal critiques aired on national television with little restraint. Confessionals were filled with harsh judgments, dismissive labels, and character attacks. But now, a wedding toast delivered in metaphor was suddenly crossing a line. Online commentary exploded. Legal experts weighed in hypothetically. Fans dissected the likelihood of any actual case. The consensus was nearly unanimous. Sharing lived experience, especially through humor, is protected. Implying identity through context isn't the same as making false claims. And perhaps most importantly, truth is a defense. Still, the threat itself mattered. Because threats aren't always about winning. Sometimes they're about intimidation. About reminding people that speaking freely comes with consequences. That joy should be quiet. That laughter should be cautious. That boundaries are negotiable. Except this time they weren't. According to those close to the women, the reaction to the legal murmurs was laughter, more champagne, more dancing, a collective refusal to be dragged back into fear. Decades of emotional management had trained them well. They recognized the tactic immediately, and they didn't engage. Meanwhile, another layer of the story was unfolding quietly, away from the reception floor but not away from the narrative. While the night was alive with music and unity, reports suggest Robyn attempted her own form of outreach. Allegedly, she sent a message to Janelle earlier that day. Emotional, lengthy, framed as concern, laced with sentiment, but it didn't land. According to multiple sources, Janelle had already drawn her digital boundaries. Numbers blocked, counts muted, lines closed. The message, whatever its intent, never reached its target. And that silence spoke volumes. Because silence isn't cruelty. It's clarity. Robyn's communication style has long been a point of debate among viewers. Soft words layered over heavy implications. Expressions of sadness that subtly recenter her own feelings. The alleged text reportedly followed that familiar pattern, emphasizing loss, emotion, and prayer rather than celebration. But this was Janelle's day. And for the first time she protected it completely. When word spread that the message had gone unanswered, the narrative began shifting elsewhere. Reports surfaced of sources close to Robyn expressing hurt, confusion, exclusion. The framing was predictable. The response from fans was not. Boundaries, they argued, aren't bullying. Blocking someone who repeatedly crosses emotional lines isn't punishment. It's self-respect. The contrast between the two camps couldn't have been clearer. One side celebrating openly, surrounded by support, grounded in laughter. The other, reportedly isolated, stewing in grievance, searching for leverage. And the night wasn't over yet. Because as powerful as the toast was, as symbolic as the returned package had been, the most defining moment was still to come. A moment that didn't involve words at all. A moment that didn't need explanation. One that cameras captured instinctively, knowing it would linger long after the music faded. The dance floor was filling. And 3 women were about to close a circle that had been broken for decades. The music started softly at first, almost as background noise, the kind of song people half notice while conversations continue. But then something shifted. Maybe it was the tempo, maybe it was timing, or maybe it was simply inevitability. Christine stepped onto the dance floor without ceremony. No announcement, no attempt to draw attention. Janelle followed a few seconds later, laughing, brushing off a comment from someone nearby. And then Mary joined them. Not hesitantly, not as an afterthought, fully, deliberately. For a moment people just watched. This wasn't choreography. There was no rehearsal. No symbolism spelled out in advance. And that's exactly why it landed so hard. 3 women who spent decades positioned against each other, often unknowingly, now standing shoulder to shoulder, moving together, smiling freely. The body language alone told a story viewers had waited years to see but never quite believed would happen. Because for so long, the narrative insisted this unity was impossible. Fans had been trained to see fractures as permanent, rivalries as baked in. The structure of the family depended on comparison, scarcity, and emotional competition. Togetherness was conditional, love was rationed, and proximity often meant conflict. But here on this dance floor there was none of that. No hierarchy, no careful spacing, no one shrinking to make room for someone else. Just presence. Someone nearby reportedly raised their phone, instinctively sensing this was a moment worth preserving. And once one camera came out, others followed. Not out of spectacle but reverence. This wasn't gossip fuel. This was closure in motion. Christine reached for Janelle's hand first. It was subtle, almost reflexive. Squeeze. Shared grin. Mary watched them, then laughed, shaking her head as if acknowledging how surreal it all felt. When she stepped closer, the space between them disappeared entirely. Whatever ghosts once stood there had no room to linger. The crowd's reaction was immediate and emotional. Applause broke out, not the polite kind, but the kind that swells from the chest. Cheers layered over the music. People weren't celebrating the dance. They were celebrating what it represented. Survival, growth, reclamation. And this is where the story takes a turn that's easy to miss if you're not paying attention. Because while everyone focused on the dance, something else was happening behind the scenes. According to those familiar with production dynamics, cameras that weren't scheduled to roll suddenly were. Crew members adjusted positions. Producers exchanged looks. Moments like this don't need to be staged. They announce themselves. And anyone who understands television knows you don't look away when lightning strikes. This wasn't just a wedding moment anymore. It was a pivot. For years, the show's emotional center revolved around tension. Who was excluded? Who was favored? Who was struggling to stay relevant? But this scene didn't fit that template. There was no villain edit to lean on. No conflict to amplify. Just resolution. And resolution is dangerous for a format built on discord. Which raised an uncomfortable question. If the story had moved on, could the show? Online speculation ignited almost instantly once clips began circulating. Fans slowed the footage down, analyzed expressions, read into body language. They noticed how relaxed Mary looked, how open Christine appeared, how grounded Janelle seemed. These weren't women bracing for fallout. These were women who had already stepped beyond it. And that realization shifted the power dynamic in a way that couldn't be undone. Because control in this world doesn't come from loud declarations, comes from relevance. And relevance is fragile. Once the emotional gravity moves elsewhere, everything that depended on it starts to wobble. According to industry chatter, conversations began quietly after the wedding. Not about contracts or renewals, at least not at first, but about direction, about tone. About whether audiences were more invested in healing than hostility. Metrics had already been hinting at it. Episodes cantered on growth consistently outperformed those steeped in recycled conflict. This dance crystallized that trend. Meanwhile, on the other side of the narrative, the response was reportedly far less celebratory. Sources claim Kody's reaction to the footage was immediate and intense. Not because of what it showed, but because of what it didn't. There was no mention of him. No reference. No shadow cast in their joy. For someone accustomed to being the axis around which all emotion turned, that absence was deafening. Anger, according to insiders, quickly turned to strategy. Statements were drafted. Messages rewritten. Attempts made to reinsert perspective. But every move ran into the same obstacle. The moment had already escaped. Public sentiment had shifted. The story was no longer about grievance. It was about freedom. And freedom is contagious. Robyn, too, reportedly felt the impact. Sources suggest she watched the clips multiple times, trying to parse what went wrong, where the connection broke, how she ended up outside a circle she once believed she anchored. The hurt was real by many accounts, but so was the confusion, because for years alignment with power felt like security, and now power had moved. What made it worse was the contrast. While one side posted vague reflections and filtered sadness, the other side remained mostly silent. No victory laps, no pointed captions, just occasional candid photos, smiles without context, laughter without explanation. That restraint did more damage than any direct response could have. Silence again became the loudest statement. Fans noticed another detail that added fuel to the conversation. In the days following the wedding, Christine, Janelle, and Meri were reportedly seen together again. No cameras, no production, just dinner. Ordinary, intentional. The kind of togetherness that doesn't need to prove anything because it's no longer performative. That's when many viewers realized this wasn't a temporary alliance. It was a redefinition. Years of shared history don't dissolve overnight. There were wounds that would never fully close. Memories that couldn't be rewritten. But reconciliation doesn't require erasure. It requires honesty. And for the first time it seemed like honesty was possible without fear. Which brings us to the most unsettling implication of all. If these women no longer needed the old narrative to survive, what happened to everyone who did? Because systems don't collapse when people fight them. They collapse when people walk away. Quietly. Completely. Without asking permission. And as the footage of that dance continued to circulate, replayed and reframed across platforms, one truth became impossible to ignore. This wasn't just a beautiful moment at a wedding. It was a closing chapter. And chapters closing always mean something new is about to begin. But not everyone gets to decide how that beginning looks. The final part begins with the echo of laughter still lingering in the wedding hall, the dance floor emptied, and the string lights casting gentle shadows across a room now charged with meaning. For the first time in decades, the energy wasn't controlled by Kody, wasn't dictated by fear or obligation or patriarchal expectation. It belonged entirely to the women. Janelle, Christine, and Meri, arm in arm, still catching their breath from the whirlwind of joy, stood in a circle that didn't need anyone else to validate it. They were not just surviving, they were thriving. And every subtle gesture, every glance, every smile, every shared inside joke, was proof that the dynamics that once kept them divided had been dismantled for good. Behind the scenes, TLC executives were reportedly in shock. Ratings data from social media engagement alone told them what they had long suspected but couldn't act on. Audiences were done with the drama dictated by one man. They craved the empowerment, the liberation, the humor, the authenticity. Production insiders whispered about the network, quietly strategizing a full pivot. Instead of framing Kody and Robyn as central, the next season would likely focus on the lives of the ex-wives, their ventures, their friendships, and yes, the occasional roast of the man who tried so hard to control them. Clips of the Forbidden Trinity and Meri's legendary toast were already being dissected internally as potential promotional gold. One executive allegedly commented, "If we don't spin this, someone else will." Meanwhile, the fallout for Kody was both personal and public. His attempt to claim defamation over Meri's toast, to regain control of the narrative, had backfired spectacularly. Legal experts in private forums were quick to point out that truth is an ironclad defense in defamation cases, and Meri's humor was protected speech. But for Kody, logic had never outweighed ego. His outrage, compounded by Robyn's failed attempts at narrative manipulation, only served to underline how irrelevant he had become. The tax bill, once meant to intimidate, had been returned to sender. The toast had humiliated him without him ever speaking. The dance floor had erased him without confrontation. Every attempt to assert dominance had been transformed into proof of his irrelevance. As for Robyn, Her victimhood narrative began to crumble under the weight of public